Hello, my name's Simon Mosey, and it's my privilege to be a Professor of Entrepreneurship and Innovation here at the University of Nottingham. We're based in the Ingenuity Lab here at the University, and it's been my absolute pleasure to witness entrepreneurs and innovators working here and internationally to address what seem like insurmountable challenges. So when you switch on the news today, you hear about challenges of healthcare, you hear about challenges of climate change, and you hear about challenges of inequality. And they all seem intractable. They seem like the kind of challenges we can do nothing about because they're so large and all-encompassing. But what we've seen by working with entrepreneurs is something can be done about them, and it usually starts by doing something local within your own community, which then can build and grow and become a movement for social change. So what I'd like to do today is share with you some of my experiences, the findings from our research into these amazing entrepreneurs, and also to give you hopefully a bit more understanding of how entrepreneurship and also innovation really work, so that when you're researching them, when you're writing about them in your journal, you can hopefully bring some new insights and come up with some new solutions to some of these large challenges that we all face. So if I start by talking about entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship, everybody has an idea about what that might mean. And the usual perception of entrepreneurship is an individual comes up with a brilliant idea, builds a business and makes lots of money. Now, there are quite a few problems with that perception. Is first of all, of course, we all know entrepreneurs that have done that. But actually, the majority of entrepreneurs that we work with are very different to that sort of perception of what entrepreneurship is all about. First and foremost, they are not heroic, exceptional individuals that when they were at school, they were trading sweets. They made their first million by the time they were 15. They lost their first million by the time they were 16. It isn't this high risk, selfish, heroic activity you might think. Most of the entrepreneurs we work with are very different to that. They're interested in problems, they're interested in understanding those problems, and then they're interested in coming up with a solution that's better than the way we do things already. And the big difference there is they don't do that by themselves. It's not all about them. They're not big egotists. They tend to be collaborative, thoughtful, reflective individuals. They seek out people that are also interested in these problems. They work with them to come up with new solutions, and collaboratively, they build new ways of doing things that are scalable. Often they do make a lot of money, but this money is usually then reinvested into solving the problem in a more efficient and effective way. So entrepreneurship isn't what we think, it's very different. And if you start looking around for examples of entrepreneurs working in health, working in climate change and working in inequality, you will start to see some different individuals than you might have thought. And when you're talking about entrepreneurship, again, it's important to not just measure it in terms of the money that is made. We always tend to think of entrepreneurship in economic terms. But equally, when you look at these entrepreneurs, you'll see them talking about the social value they create, benefits to people's health, benefits in reducing carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere, and benefits in terms of reducing inequality within populations, which actually benefits the whole population. So that's just a quick overview of our research into entrepreneurship. I'd now like to talk a little bit about our research into innovation. Now, innovation, again, there are some perceptions about innovation. When I say innovation, most people think straight away about mobile phones, about apps, about social media. Those of you based in Malaysia will be familiar with the Grab app that allows you to do everything. And so you think that's an innovation, that's a new and exciting thing. And of course, Grab is an amazing innovation and it's very useful to you. But there are a lot more innovations going on than you maybe think. A lot of them are hidden and invisible. But when you start researching innovation around your challenge of interest for this journal, you will see some quite surprising things about innovation. And a little bit like entrepreneurship, our innovation research comes up with some quite surprising findings about innovation, which when you find out about them will enable you and empower you to come up with ideas that are more likely to change the way things work. So the first misconception about innovation is it's all about a new product or an app or a high-tech thing. But when we look at innovation, we talk much more broadly than that. It's not just a product. It could be a process, a way that products or services are delivered. It could be a new way of organizing things. And equally, it could be a government innovation. It could be a new policy that changes the way people are taxed, changes the incentives to do things that produce energy or produce carbon dioxide, or indeed the way people work, the way people trade, the way people interact. So what I'm going to do is give you an example of each of those kinds of innovation, examples you've probably not heard of, but hopefully that will pique your interest. You can start to research these innovations, and that again will stimulate ideas about how you can improve the situation in your community of interest. So the first innovation I'd like to talk about is an innovation in social care. So one of the most inspirational individuals I've met is called Paul. And Paul had a job working for the government as a social worker. And Paul worked for looking at teenagers that were at risk. So teenagers that were maybe taking drugs, maybe engaging in criminal behavior, maybe they came from a challenging family or economic background, and they were struggling to work within society's rules, and they were really very lost. And Paul developed a way of working with those individuals and really helping them figure out what they wanted to do with their lives and how to get to where they wanted to be. And his work was working incredibly well. He had a team of people, and they were turning people's lives around. Unfortunately, as is the way around the world, budgets were chopped, and Paul found himself with no team and no budget to do the work, despite the fact the work was going incredibly well. So what did he do? He innovated. He decided he could deliver his service free of charge using an online platform. So he set up a Facebook site called Try Life. So I encourage you to have a look at Try Life. And on that Facebook site, he started having conversations with teenagers that were facing challenges. And what he found the most effective way to help teenagers make better decisions was to build scenarios. So a scenario could be, you go to a party, you're underage, you get offered some drugs. Do you take the drugs? If you take the drugs, what's likely to happen? If you don't take the drugs, what's likely to happen? And what he found was with teenagers, as well as talking them through these scenarios, it became even more powerful if you built a video of this scenario so they could picture it and see it happening and have people acting out these interactions. And what Paul found out then was that he found that teenagers would help him build those movies. So all of a sudden, as well as building a community of teenagers facing challenging situations, helping each other, he had a group of filmmakers building films with different scenarios and different endings, which had a profound and positive impact upon people's behavior. So we had an innovation there in terms of the way the service is delivered, the cost of the service, the fact that people are building films, which is a new way of doing things, and this took off. And if you look at the Try Life website and Facebook page, they have millions of followers. And Paul, on the back of this, was invited to Netflix studios to help advise them on how to build films with different endings. He was invited by gang leaders in South America and in North America to build films to try and discourage people from joining gangs. Such was the fame that he built. So he has had social change as a result of his innovation all around the world. So that's a really interesting story for you to look at and maybe think about how it could be delivered in the community you're interested in. Other examples of innovations, if we think about climate change, again, a little bit like teenagers, it seems a huge problem we can't do anything about. Two of our students, Emily and Anna, had a look and thought, how can we improve the situation? They were particularly interested in biodiversity. Within the UK, we have a real problem in intensive farming, where we grow a monoculture, single crops, which reduces the biodiversity in the countryside. So therefore you have less insects and less birds. and the agriculture suffers, and the economy suffers, and everybody suffers as a result. So what they did is they looked back through history, and this is a really interesting way of developing innovations, and they found an ancient technique called a seed ball. And what you do is you put wildflower seeds in a clay ball, and you put a little bit of chili seed in there as well, and that protects the wildflower seeds from predators. You throw the clay balls into your window box or into your hedgerow or into your garden, and then when the time is right, the wildflowers will grow and it will introduce more biodiversity into that small setting. That seems like a very small thing and a very small change. Fast forward a few years, their business is growing, they're investing their profits back into wildflower meadows and allotments, but they are also formed a partnership with the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation in the UK, and they ran a campaign with children to sow 1 million seed balls throughout the UK. So 1 million seed balls were manufactured by Anna and Emily's company and then spread throughout the country. And you think of the effect of 1 million seed balls had on the UK countryside. So again, when you're thinking about maybe increasing biodiversity, changing the climate situation in your community, maybe a simple solution like this could have a big difference. The final area I'd like to talk to you about is government policy. So government policy is a very controversial area, and again, it's something we think we can do nothing about. But of course, in a democratic system, you can lobby for different government policy. You can write petitions, you can work with local government, and you can change the way things are done in response to your demand as a citizen. One government policy you might be interested in looking at is something called universal basic income. And if you Google universal basic income, you will find quite a surprising thing, that this as a policy has been tried in many different communities around the world, and it's had amazing and surprising effects. So what is universal basic income? Universal basic income is the idea that everybody as a human right deserves an income from their government which will feed them and house them so they can live in comfort and safety. There are a lot of objections to universal basic income because it runs counter to a lot of our perceptions about how humans behave. And one of the big arguments about universal basic income is if you give people enough money to live off comfortably, they will do nothing with their lives. They will sit around playing on their Xbox or on their mobile phone. They will eat bad food, they will drink and smoke, and society will have a negative result to giving people effectively free money. But what was found from the trials of universal basic income in South America, North America, Canada, Scandinavian countries, Switzerland, parts of Southeast Asia, was quite the opposite. People in communities did not fritter away all the money. They tended to invest it either in themselves or their families, in education, in arts classes, in community work, in volunteering, in caring for older people or younger people or vulnerable people within the community. So actually what you saw was a positive return from the money you invested in universal basic income, which benefited the individuals and the whole community. Seems counterintuitive. The second objection to universal basic income is that where will all the money come from? How can we afford to give people the money for them to live and feed themselves and have healthcare and all of the things that some people consider are fundamental human rights? And again, there's some interesting economic statistics, but in a lot of countries around the world, the cost of the social welfare system, so all the government workers who are involved in the bureaucracy around figuring out who should get what benefit, what healthcare support, what unemployment income, what insurance, and then monitoring and dispersing that income, that cost is far greater than the cost of just giving every citizen universal basic income. So straight away, the numbers do add up. Again, this sounds very different to what we think the way policy should work and the way costs should work and the way society should work. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but look into this for yourself and you will find that some of the assumptions you made about policy and government and society and benefits don't necessarily bear scrutiny, and some of the numbers are really interesting to look at. So if that's an area you're interested in, have a look at your local government policy, have a look at policies around the world, and then think about how they might change. So the final piece I want to bring to you really is bringing this all together. These innovations, these different kinds of entrepreneurs are living within the Ingenuity Lab that you've had a look around as part of this short film. So I would encourage you also, as well as looking at the examples I gave you, have a look at the Ingenuity Lab, some of the entrepreneurs that are working here. We have entrepreneurs that are taking plastic out of the ocean and building building materials out of it. We have entrepreneurs that are using personalized health to give people nutritional advice specific to their own genomics. And we have entrepreneurs that are thinking about addressing women's health and areas of the economy that people don't normally look at. So we've got a much more inclusive form of entrepreneurship and some revolutionary ideas that are working within the community here, but could equally be taken and translated into communities that you're interested in. So please have a look at what's going on in the Ingenuity Lab as well, and that should give you some inspiration. And also on the webpage, there are lots of resources and further reading, should you be interested. And of course, have a look at the work of all the academics here as well. So thank you very much for your attention. I wish you the best of luck in your research, and I really look forward to seeing the journals that you produce and your amazing ideas that are going to change the world for the better.